Hello and welcome to the program, UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about UFOs over New Jersey. That's correct, UFOs over New Jersey. Found these over at the Nuforc site. As always, very cool over there. If the sound's off a little bit, I apologize. My AKG microphone that I got on eBay for $50 here a couple weeks ago, not working. Working, I guess I should say, but barely. You can hardly hear it. It was working fine a couple days ago. Not sure if it's the microphone or if it's just crappy Windows 11. Either way, it sucks. I had the worst luck with mics, it seems. Moving on, this first UFO happened on December 15th, 2025. Duration approximately 1 minute. Number of observers 1. Location Swedesboro, New Jersey. Coordinates 394633 by north by 753303 west. Shape rectangle, color reflective, estimated size 1 to 2 feet long, viewed from land. Direction from viewer approximately 12 degrees north, angle of elevation 80 degrees, heading southwest. Closest distance no more than 100 feet. Estimated speed comparable to the speed of a common bird. Characteristics: or a haze around object, changed color, aircraft nearby. 4 silent rectangular objects with reflective surfaces and apparent camouflage, observed at low altitude. Date December 15th, 2025, approximately 5:59 a.m. Recording began at 6 minutes and 13 seconds a.m. Location Swedesboro, New Jersey. I am submitting this report to Nuforc rather than posting it on social media because I am seeking serious documentation and analysis. Portions of this account were originally drafted for an online post but were never shared publicly. On the morning of December 15th, 2025, while at work, I looked up at the night sky, something I commonly do because of my interest in astronomy. Light pollution in the tri-state is significant, so I regularly scan the sky whenever possible. At approximately 5:59 a.m., I observed 4 rectangular objects flying overhead. They appeared to be at a relatively low altitude, no more than 100 feet above me, and were moving together in a coordinated formation. The objects maintained close spacing with a consistent gap between each one. My first thought was that they might be birds, but I quickly ruled that out. My second thought was that they could be drones. However, I did not observe any propellers, standard drone shapes, navigation lights, or hear any sound. Despite the low altitude, the objects were completely silent. As I continued observing them, I noticed behavior that seemed highly unusual. The objects appeared reflective and began displaying what I can best describe as active camouflage, with their surfaces seemingly blending into and reflecting the surrounding sky. This effect became noticeable after several seconds of observation. During this portion of the sighting, I did not observe any visible lights, only reflective surfaces. As the objects moved further away, I began recording. The video shows them at great distance when they initially passed overhead. When the objects were directly overhead, I did not observe distinct lights, only reflective surfaces. As they moved further away, I became able to distinguish 4 bright points on each object. I cannot determine whether these were actual lights or reflections that became more visible due to changes in distance, viewing angle, and contrast. I did not observe any blinking or standard aviation light patterns. After the objects disappeared into the distance, I noticed a helicopter flying north. I cannot say with certainty when it first entered the area, as it may already have been present before I noticed it. It appeared to already be in motion and relatively nearby, rather than approaching from a distance. I did not observe any direct interaction between the helicopter and the objects. Additional notes: although I considered recording during the sighting, I remained focused on observing the objects directly and was reluctant to look away for fear of losing sight of them. I began recording only after the objects had already moved further away. Any brief moments when the objects moved out of the camera frame occurred because I was attempting to observe them directly rather than through my phone screen. The objects maintained a rectangular shape throughout the sighting, although fine details were difficult to distinguish because of their reflective surfaces and apparent camouflage effect. This is not an experience I ever expected to have, nor is it something I'm sharing lightly. I am reporting exactly what I observed and am willing to answer any follow-up questions. This is an investigative report. On February 15th, 2026 at 1 p.m. Pacific time, I interviewed the witness by telephone regarding the sighting that occurred on December 15th, 2025 at approximately 5:59 a.m. Eastern Time. The witness stated that while at work, he was looking up at the sky when he observed 4 rectangular objects silently flying overhead. He explained that it was early in the morning and still somewhat dark, but he was nevertheless able to observe the 4 objects flying approximately 40 feet above him. He also reported that the weather was clear with only a light breeze. The witness estimated that each object was approximately 1 to 2 feet long. He stated that the object appeared to be camouflaged because they were somewhat translucent, allowing some light to pass through them while remaining partially obscured. He added that the objects reflected light from an unknown source, although he could not determine where the light originated. According to the witness, the 4 objects traveled north at approximately the speed of a common bird. 2 objects flew in front, while the other 2 followed behind. The witness stated the objects maintained very close formation while keeping a consistent gap between each one. They did not appear to be physically connected. Initially, he believed the objects might be drones, but he observed no sound, propellers, or navigation lights. He emphasized that he is very familiar with drones and is confident these objects were not drones. The witness stated that he began recording as the objects moved away. During that time, they appeared as 4 bright points that moved differently from one another, and he believed they accelerated as they disappeared from view. The witness stated that after recording the objects, he felt uncomfortable and frightened. He added that he previously wondered whether he should have recorded them. He also observed a helicopter flying northbound, and after the 4 objects had disappeared but could not determine whether the helicopter was related to the sighting, the witness later sent me a photograph of the type of helicopter he believed he observed, which was possibly a CH-47 Chinook. He also provided a photograph of another aircraft he occasionally sees in the area, a V-22 Osprey. A search of Flight Radar 24 did not identify either the objects or the helicopter, and they gave us a classification of anomalous sighting. Keith Bickford, Nuforc investigator. Yeah, that's a wild one. This next sighting is dated October 31st, 2025, 7:40 a.m. It says approximately 10 seconds. Observers 2, location Edison, New Jersey, near Walmart. Shape changing, color pale yellow maroon, comparable to several dimes held at arm's length. Viewed from land, direction from viewer west, angle of elevation 45 degrees, heading westward. Closest distance approximately 2,000 feet, approximately 300 mile per hour for the speed, with the final orb accelerating rapidly. Characteristics: lights on object or haze around object, change color. 5 or more dim maroon gaseous orbs in a loose reverse Big Dipper formation, dancing and flickering across the sky. Now, I see a picture of these things. It's pretty cool. Dated October 31st, 2025. Location, Edison, New Jersey. I was standing at the windows getting ready to put breakfast out for my squirrels, Sandy and Smokey. It was quiet, fully daylight, and no one else was around yet. Something made me turn my head sharply to the left. I still don't know whether I caught movement in the corner of my eye or was simply compelled to look. Either way, the moment I looked left, there they were, just above my neighbor's roofline, at what appeared to be the altitude of a low-flying aircraft, but definitely lower than a commercial jet. There were 5, or possibly more, as they kept fading in and out, making them difficult to count. Dim, gaseous, maroonish red lights. They were not bright at all, but instead appeared pale, like old light bulbs that are about to burn out. Some were brighter than others, flickering and twinkling continuously. They did not appear to be solid objects. Instead, they looked soft, almost plasma-like, with irregular potato or crescent-shaped outlines rather than perfectly round forms. Their color was a muted, pale maroon with a slight yellowish tint whenever they pulsed. They were definitely not the sharp white or colored LED lights typically seen on drones or aircraft. The objects were arranged in a loose formation that resembled a reverse Big Dipper, with the bowl on the left and the handle trailing to the right. From my perspective, The formation occupied a large portion of the sky. It was not a tight cluster, but spread across nearly my entire field of view. All of the objects moved together in perfect synchronization from right to left, almost as though they were sliding sideways across the sky. At the same time, they exhibited a jittery dancing motion that seemed almost playful. I actually said out loud, "They're dancing." The lights flickered on and off continuously. One would dim while another brightened, almost as if they were taking turns. The entire sighting lasted approximately 5 to 10 seconds. The four objects on the left gradually pulled ahead and disappeared beyond my line of sight. That left the trailing object on the lower right by itself. It stopped completely for a second or two, changed from its soft, round, gaseous appearance into what looked like a flat line, as though it had turned edge on, then immediately returned to its rounded shape. It then accelerated smoothly but rapidly to the left, caught up with the others, and disappeared from view. That is wild. So first you're seeing these things as gaseous balls kind of fading in and out, and then this last one just turns on its side or transforms somehow into this line. It's almost like pure energy and darts off. These are wild. Yeah, reminding me a little bit of these orb sightings talked about in the Department of War filings just released. This next sighting is dated October 22nd, 2023 at approximately 5:30 a.m. Duration, approximately 5 seconds. Observers 1. Location, New Hanover, New Jersey. Details, 40 degrees, 60 north, 74, 34, 51 west. Shape triangle, color black. Estimated size, the size of a large bus on a football field. Viewed from land. Angle of elevation, 90 degrees, directly overhead. Closest distance, approximately 100 to 500 feet. Estimated speed, 50 to 200 mile per hour. Lights on object. Black triangular craft with a single red light passed directly overhead, blocking out the stars. I am the observer. I have no relevant background experience, and I have normal, uncorrected vision. The sighting occurred sometime between approximately 5:30 and 6 a.m. It was still noticeably nighttime. I was lying on the ground watching the stars. The sky was clear with little, if any, cloud cover or fog. It was cold with no unusual weather conditions, no rain, snow, or storm clouds. The object was large, seemingly perfectly triangular craft. It appeared entirely black, completely opaque, and non-reflective. The only visible illumination was a single red light at its center. The craft itself was visible only as a silhouette, completely blocking out the starlight behind it as it passed overhead. The craft displayed a single, steady red light that appeared to be located at the geometric center of the triangle. The light was not especially bright and, in my opinion, would have illuminated objects only within approximately 25 feet of the craft. The object was completely silent. There may have been a very quiet, low-frequency rumble that I felt rather than heard, but I cannot clearly remember. The object appeared to be flying at a relatively low altitude, approximately 100 to 500 feet above the ground. My best estimate would be between 100 and 200 feet, although I have no reliable frame of reference. The craft traveled in a perfectly straight line, a linear path, and passed directly overhead. I do not know which direction I was facing while lying on the ground, so I cannot provide a compass heading. The object's speed remained constant throughout the sighting. It did not appear to accelerate or decelerate. It seemed to be traveling at approximately the speed of a helicopter flying horizontally, which I estimate to have been between 40 and 200 mile per hour. From the moment the object entered my field of view until it disappeared, the sighting lasted approximately 5 seconds. That's wild. Just imagine being out there in your backyard and look up and see this giant triangle UFO fly overhead and that red light right in the center. That is so cool. This sighting is dated December 23, 8:30 p.m., approximately 30 minutes. Observers 1, Long Branch, New Jersey. Observed over Greens Avenue and Cedar Avenue at approximately 4 different points during a walk. Shape rectangle, color white/gray. Estimated size approximately 30 to 50 feet wide and 15 to 30 feet tall. Viewed from land. Direction from viewer east. Angle of elevation 75 degrees. Changed direction at different points during the sighting. Closest distance approximately 500 feet. estimated speed 400 mile per hour, characteristics lights on object or haze around object, two rectangular craft observed multiple times during a walk, along with the stationary green light in the clouds. While walking my dog at about 8:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve, I observed two rectangular craft flying overhead. I saw them at approximately 4 different points during my walk. One craft displayed 3 red lights on its underside, while the other displayed 2 green lights. The lights on both craft were evenly spaced in a straight line across the center of their undersides. At one point, the craft with the red lights was flying directly overhead in a straight line when it suddenly stopped instantly, remained stationary for a few seconds, then accelerated away in the opposite direction at an angle. Later, while walking back home, I observed a large stationary green light slowly pulsing from the underside of the cloud layer. As I reached my front door and took one final look before going inside, I saw the craft with the green lights flying fairly low and steadily eastward over Cedar Avenue. This was likely the closest view I had of either object. The object did not appear metallic. Instead, it looked almost as though it were made of a smooth ceramic material. I then went inside and told my fiancée what I had witnessed. I did not observe any propellers, jet exhaust, or any visible means of propulsion, and the craft made no sound. Unfortunately, I did not have my phone or camera with me. Even if I had, I may have been too astonished to think about recording the sighting. I am not sure whether it is related, but for approximately 2 weeks afterward, I observed a flashing green orb on several occasions. I did record video of this later phenomena. However, it may be unrelated to the original sighting and could have been a drone. We got time for a couple more here. This one is dated April 13th, 2023 at 12 a.m. Approximately 45 seconds. Observers 2. Location, Mount Ephraim, New Jersey, near Nicholson Road. Shaped triangle, approximately 10 foot by 10 foot by 10 foot. Lights on object or haze around object changed color. Brilliant triangle craft flew approximately 25 feet overhead before reversing direction. My girlfriend and I had been sitting outside for a couple hours because it was a beautiful night. We had the back door open and were going in and out of the house throughout the evening. At one point, my girlfriend stepped outside and immediately called for me to come look. As I walked out, she asked, "Is that a plane?" At first I said yes, but I immediately realized it was nothing like a plane. The object was flying very low, approximately 25 to 30 feet above the ground, approaching from the east. At first, it was difficult to determine its shape. From a distance, the blue, red, and green lights at the front appeared as a single straight line, moving slowly toward us. As it came closer and eventually passed directly overhead, it became obvious that it was a brilliantly illuminated triangular craft. On its underside were 4 lights, unlike any colors I have ever seen. At each corner of the triangle was a brilliant red light, while the center contained a beautiful golden yellow light. The craft flew so low that I felt I could have lightly tossed a tennis ball and hit it. It almost felt as though the experience was intended specifically for us. The object continued westward at a slow, steady pace. It made absolutely no sound. It seemed to glide effortlessly, as though the surrounding air had no effect on it. The craft was beautiful, magnificent, and unlike anything I had ever witnessed. The experience was profoundly life-changing. As we watched it continue west, I jokingly said out loud, "Come back." Almost immediately, the craft executed an incredible U-turn. It was now heading back toward the east, although much further away than it had been only seconds earlier. We both thought it was returning to us. Instead, it continued flying until it turned north and eventually became nothing more than a tiny red point of light. I have no idea how many miles it covered in those few seconds, yet when it was directly overhead, it was moving so slowly that it almost seemed as though it were observing us. This experience occurred approximately 14 to 16 hours before I submitted this report, and it has profoundly changed my perspective on life and the universe. This was not an illusion, nor was it something imagined by the two of us. The craft genuinely felt as though it had intentionally stopped by to let us know it was there. I wish I had my phone with me. I have heard many people say that after unusual experiences, and now I understand why. Neither of us had our phones, and even if we had, I doubt we would have thought to record it. We were completely transfixed from the moment we first saw it. The main facts remain the same. The craft made absolutely no sound. The lights displayed colors unlike anything I have ever seen. It flew effortlessly, almost as though it existed independently of gravity or aerodynamic forces. I observed no airflow over or behind the craft and no visible means of propulsion. It was absolutely mind-blowing. Yeah, that is pretty wild. Absolutely mind-blowing. That's the thing. I mean, there's a lot of debunkers online, especially on X. I guess they must make a lot of money doing that. I'm certainly not making that kind of money. And they can talk all day long about proof and evidence and this and that. But if you've seen one of these things up close and personal, like this fellow here and his girlfriend, there's just no denying. Here's one dated September 2nd, 2025, duration 2 minutes, observers 2, location Edison, New Jersey. I was standing exactly here and gives the coordinates facing west, shape, sphere, color metallic, size 1 to several yards across, viewed from land, direction from viewer west, angle of elevation 50 degrees heading west, closest distance 3 miles, estimated speed from stationary to moderate speed, possibly a balloon. Characteristics: emitted other objects. Well, I don't know how often balloons emit other balloons, but we'll see. I'm a young man from Belgium and work as a train driver. I consider myself to be a serious and rigorous person, but on that day, I witnessed something that I still cannot explain. I was visiting the Acropolis in Athens on Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025, with my partner during a holiday. At 5:24 p.m., I decided to take an artistic photograph of the Erythraean with the sun in the background. I wanted the sun to appear just behind one of the temple's columns. Completely by chance, I started zooming in with my phone. As luck would have it, I had just purchased the new Galaxy S25, which has excellent 20 by zoom and 4K. That is when I noticed a bright point of light, and I zoomed in all the way to see what it was. The object was so high and so far away that I was incredibly lucky to spot it at all, purely by chance. I then observed a large metallic sphere spinning on itself and moving in sudden burst. It would move forward, stop, descend, stop again, and then continue. While filming, I made a point of keeping one of the temple's columns in the frame at the same time as the object so that I would have a fixed point of reference and could confirm that the object was indeed moving. Its movement was somewhat reminiscent of a drone, but at such a high altitude that it seems unlikely. Its metallic appearance and perfectly spherical shape lead me to rule out the possibility of it being a drone. Its jerky movement and the way it rotated on itself lead me to rule out the possibility of it being a plane, an ultralight aircraft, or a balloon. Later, while consulting on your website, I came across a report also from Athens, and I noticed a small sphere barely visible in that video. When I looked back at my own footage, I realized that the same thing appeared there as well. There was probably some dust in the air around me, of course, but it's quite clear that the sphere was not alone and seemed to be accompanied by other small objects moving around at high speed. I hesitated for a long time before sharing this. I must admit that I felt reluctant to speak about it, and having recently launched my own company, I've also been extremely busy and kept putting it off. I should also add that I was unable to film for longer because the sun was hurting my eyes so badly and the heat was absolutely oppressive that day. However, after watching the documentary, The Age of Disclosure, I finally decided to take the time to submit my testimony. That's odd. I guess he must be living in New Jersey and spotted this thing over Athens. Either way, pretty cool sighting. This last sighting happened on January 1st, 2016, 10:30 p.m., duration of 5 to 8 minutes. Observers 1, location Ridgewood, New Jersey. Details near my home, 664 Allen Road, shape other. Small craft traveling low and slow with a clear dome emitting orange and red light. Almost sounds like one of these old school flying saucers with a dome on top. I went outside to walk my dog and noticed an unusual light heading in my direction from the west. I live under a flight path to LaGuardia Airport and am accustomed to seeing airliners flying overhead frequently. As this object approached, I knew immediately that it was not a normal airliner. I went back into my house and asked my wife to come outside to observe the object with me. After a minute or so, she returned to the house because she was frightened. Unfortunately, I did not have my cell phone with me to record my images. The object steadily approached at about 30 to 40 miles per hour at treetop level. When it came closer, I was able to see it clearly. It was about 50 feet in diameter and had a torus shape. In other words, it was donut-shaped, but without a hole in the center. A clear dome was centrally located on top of the object and was approximately 15 feet wide and 15 feet high. The light from the object emanated from the dome and was red and orange, best described as fire or lightning in a bottle. It reminded me of a Chinese lantern, but many magnitudes brighter and larger. There were windows clearly visible all around the periphery of the object, equally spaced from the top to the bottom. The windows were rectangular in shape, and I would estimate that they were about 2 feet high and 3 feet wide. My guess is that there were probably 16 to 20 windows in total, since I was able to see about 7 or 8 from my perspective. The body of the object was gray to black in color. The object made no sound at all. If I had not gone outside to walk my dog, it would have passed by and I would have had no idea it had ever been there. It exhibited no normal means of propulsion. There were no propellers, helicopter blades, jet engines, wings, or lights on the bottom of the craft. At a point almost directly in front of my home, the object turned and flew off to the north and at the same speed at which it had approached. It disappeared into the distance and I never saw it again. I reported my sighting to the local police department and asked whether anyone else had reported anything. However, the dispatcher said there had been no other reports. I regret that this account is old. However, I did not know whom to report it to at the time. I hope this report is useful, and I wonder if anyone else has ever had a similar experience. Well, the reports are always useful, and we love to hear them. Hey, if you like the program today, don't forget to hit like, follow, subscribe. It doesn't cost a dime. A big thank you to the folks that support the program financially. It helps immensely. Until next time, this is UFO Warning. Over and out.